For more than half a century, the American formula for winning a war has been brutally simple. Build the most advanced, most expensive, most dominant weapon on the planet. From the F-15 to the B-2, the US has owned the skies by fielding jets that were a generation ahead of everyone else. The F-35 Lightning II is the purest form of that philosophy. A stealth fighter so advanced. It's less an aircraft, and more like a flying supercomputer. It's the crown jewel of a military strategy now projected to cost over $2 trillion across its lifetime. But what if the idea that holds this whole strategy together doesn't beat a better opponent, but a cheaper one? What if the real threat isn't a super jet that outflies the F-35, but a good enough stealth fighter that you can build by the hundreds and afford to lose? This is the story of a fundamental shift in warfare. It's about how China is preparing to fight the next war not by building a better F-35, but by building a numbingly simple answer to American power, a cheap stealth fighter that turns US trillion-dollar war plans into a losing bet. And by the end of this video, you'll see why the jet that looks like a bargain might be the most dangerous airplane China has ever built. Not because of what it can do in a dogfight, but because of what it does to American strategy. To get why this is such a threat, you have to grasp the insane degree of faith America has placed in its military doctrine. The modern US war plan isn't just a collection of planes and ships. It's a carefully engineered ecosystem built around a few golden assets. At the center of it all is the F-35. This isn't just a jet, it's a global enterprise. The total lifetime cost of the F-35 program is now estimated at up to $2 trillion. It's designed to replace or support almost everything: air superiority, strike, electronic warfare, intelligence, even command and control. The F-35's real weapon isn't its missiles, it's its sensor fusion. The way it vacuums up data from radars, infrared sensors, satellites, other jets, and ships, and turns it into a single, clean picture of the battlefield. It's the quarterback of American AirPower, feeding that picture to other assets and letting them kill from safety. Then you add the carriers. The US Navy maintains a fleet of nuclear-powered supercarriers, floating air bases whose F-35s swing out for strikes deep into contested zones. Each carrier group is a multi-billion-dollar projection of power, wrapped in a screen of destroyers and submarines. For the most dangerous missions, deep in enemy territory, there's the B-21 Raider. This next-generation stealth bomber is designed to hit the most valuable targets long before the other side even knows it's there. The kind of aircraft you use on the first night of a war to blind, deafen, and decapitate an entire defense network. And tying all of this together is the Pentagon's guiding vision for future conflict. The kill web, a tightly connected lattice of satellites, airborne sensors, stealth jets, and long-range missiles. In this vision, American forces don't go toe-to-toe in fair fights. They see first, shoot first, and win from standoff range. But that whole architecture rests on one fragile assumption: that you can build a relatively small number of incredibly advanced, incredibly expensive assets, and keep them safe. What happens if the enemy stops playing along with that script? China's answer to American high-tech warfare is rooted in a different philosophy. Don't win at any price, but win at an affordable one. Enter the J-35, often associated with its export cousin, the FC-31. On the ramp, it looks suspiciously like an F-35's leaner, hungrier relative. It has canted twin tails, stealth shaping, internal weapons bays, and a cockpit that screams fifth generation. Recent footage from early 2024 shows new J-35s being built faster than most analysts expected. Satellite imagery of Chinese shipyards suggests that serial production is ramping up, especially for carrier-capable variants meant to fly from China's new flat tops. On paper, its specs are impressive, but also pragmatic. Its reported top speed of around Mach 1.8 isn't eye-watering. Its sensors and avionics aren't as publicly hyped as the F-35's. It's almost certainly less stealthy than a pristine American jet. But here's the trap: it doesn't have to be. The J-35 doesn't need to be a better F-35 to be a threat. It just needs to be modern, survivable, and most importantly, affordable. Analysts estimate its unit cost somewhere in the $70 or $85 million range, depending on configuration. On paper, that overlaps the F-35, but remember, Chinese labor, local supply chains, and state-driven industrial policy can push effective costs down drastically once production scales. And unlike the F-35, the J-35 seems designed from the start to be something else. A stealth fighter built not for a perfect duel, but for a brutal war of attrition. If you can build more of them, faster, and lose them without political panic, the entire cost equation of air warfare starts to tilt. For years, US think tanks like RAND and CSS have quietly run war games simulating a conflict with China over Taiwan or the wider Pacific. The public summary of those games is almost always the same. The United States might still win, but the price is horrifying. In the most pessimistic runs, US and allied forces lose ships, jets, and crews at a rate not seen since World War II. And that's before you add a mass-produced stealth fighter into the mix. Imagine a Pacific fight where China launches waves of missiles. For every incoming anti-ship missile, a US Navy destroyer might have to fire an interceptor like the SM-6. The SM-6 is an incredible piece of technology, and it costs several $1 million per shot. From a purely economic standpoint, China can drain American magazines with sheer volume. Every defensive launch is money burned. Every hit ship is a strategic disaster. Now scale that up. Picture an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer calling back to its carrier. We've spent half our missile loadout just surviving the first 2 hours. In this environment, US fighters can't afford to waste a single missile. Every AMRAAM fired at a target that isn't a clear, high-value threat is a luxury. This is where the J-35 becomes a crucial piece on China's chessboard. A wave of J-35s mixed with drones and older fighters becomes a threat cloud. American pilots and ship commanders can't easily know which radar track is a cheap decoy and which one is a credible stealth aircraft guiding in long-range anti-ship missiles. If both sides lose jets, it looks like a draw. But strategically, it's anything but. When the US loses an F-35, it loses not just a jet, but billions in program cost, a world-class pilot, and one node in that delicate kill web. When China loses a J-35, it loses a cheaper jet in a much bigger pool. In multiple classified and open-source war games, US forces have been shown running dangerously low on missiles and aircraft after only a week of high-intensity fighting. The more China leans into mass missiles, mass drones, mass good-enough stealth fighters, the more it forces America into a war of attrition it never planned for. So ask yourself, in that kind of fight, who really wins if both sides trade 10 jets? The J-35's most dangerous feature might not be its stealth or its weapons. Its true purpose could be far more insidious: to act as the eyes and ears for a vast Chinese weapons ecosystem designed to make US strategy unaffordable. Think of it as a forward, semi-disposable sensor node. Every J-35 that survives long enough to detect a US carrier, tanker, AWACS, or B-21 doesn't have to kill it. It just has to see it and pass targeting data back to long-range missiles, submarines, or shore batteries. The nightmare scenario for an American commander isn't losing a dogfight to a J-35. It's losing a carrier because a cheap stealth jet slipped close enough for long enough to point 100 missiles in the right direction. Now, imagine this. A US carrier group edges into range to launch F-35 strikes. Suddenly, it's not just being stalked by satellites or over-the-horizon radars. It's being sniffed out by multiple J-35s flying low, popping up on and off radar, sharing data with drones and ships. At the same time, DF-21D and DF-26B anti-ship ballistic missiles, the so-called carrier killers, are waiting for a firing solution. There is currently no perfect defense against a coordinated volley of those weapons. Do you push your trillion-dollar fleet forward and risk it being bracketed by missiles guided in part by a jet that costs a fraction of an F-35? Or do you pull back and watch your ability to project power across the Pacific shrink with every mile? The J-35's real victory may be this: it doesn't have to kill every F-35. It just has to make using them a strategically losing gamble. The threat doesn't stop at China's borders. If the J-35, or its export-focused twin, the FC-31, goes global, It could quietly rewrite the balance of power far beyond the Pacific. The F-35 program today is more than a weapons sale. It's a political alliance. When a country buys the F-35, it's buying into a U.S. ecosystem of logistics, software, weapons, and data sharing that can last for decades. The FC-31 is pitched at nations that are priced out of, or politically blocked from, F-35 access. States that want stealth capability, but either can't afford American strings attached, or don't want them. Pakistan has already signaled strong interest. If Islamabad becomes the first major FC-31 buyer, it instantly gives China a stealth foothold over the Indian Ocean and South Asia. Other potential buyers frequently mentioned by analysts include Egypt, Gulf states, even some Southeast Asian air forces frustrated with Western export limits. Imagine a world where, instead of Western-aligned skies filled with F-35s feeding data into U.S. networks, you have an entire belt of countries flying Chinese stealth fighters that talk to Chinese satellites, Chinese data links, and Chinese weapons. In that world, the US doesn't just lose market share, it loses eyes and ears. So here's the real nightmare. What if the cheap stealth fighter doesn't just win China a war, but slowly erodes American influence without a shot being fired? Which ally do you think would jump first for a budget ticket into the stealth club? Let me know in the comments and explain why. The story of the J-35 isn't a simple F-35 versus J-35 tech comparison. It's a clash of two completely different philosophies of air power. On one side, the American vision, a handful of near-perfect, irreplaceable platforms dominating the battlefield through information, stealth, and precision. Good enough stealth, backed by overwhelming numbers of missiles, drones, and regional bases. In that vision, the purpose of a fighter isn't to be invincible, it's to be affordable enough to lose. And that's the uncomfortable question the J-35 forces on American planners. In a real high-intensity Pacific war, would you rather have a few nearly perfect jets, or hundreds of good enough ones that you can keep sending back into the fight? The US is already scrambling for answers. Talk of attritable drones, cheaper fighters, and dispersed operations is rising fast. But shifting from a trillion-dollar, exquisite platform mindset to a more expendable one isn't easy or fast. So, I'll leave you with this. In the next big air war, does the deadliest weapon belong to the side with the best jet, or to the side that can afford to lose the most? Tell me in the comments which side you'd bet on, and what you think the US should build next to survive this new age of air combat. And if you want a deep dive into how the B-21 or NGAD changes this equation, hit subscribe so you don't miss it. Because on this channel, we don't just compare specs, we expose the war plans behind them.